Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, we're going to jump right into it. Today's topic of discussion, we're going to talk about these PPP loans and part grants, as well as the economic stimulus payments, because I've been receiving a lot of questions regarding that. So I'm going to start with the economic stimulus uh, payments that people are emailing me, texting me, inboxing me, wondering whether or not they're eligible with that. For that, before I begin, again, my name is Beverly Winstead. I'm a tax controversy attorney here in the Washington, D.C. area. Help people that typically have problems with the IRS, whether you are going through an audit, we defend you in an audit. If you owe IRS a bunch of money, we work to maybe negotiate a settlement with them. If you have unfiled tax returns, we help you to get compliant. Joining me today, who it looks like I just lost, is Joye Sistrunk. I'm gonna come back to her, but I have
We
April.
can see her now. I could see her.
You can see her?
Yeah, she's back on.
Okay, she's back on. Okay,
She's leaving.
great. Okay, for some reason I thought I lost you, Joye. So
No.
Joye is a wonderful CPA, has a firm here in the Washington, D.C. area, specifically Lanham, right?
Yes, in Atlanta.
Okay, in Lanham. She is definitely the go-to person, I think, for these PPP loans and grants. And about 2 weeks ago, she joined us and shared information about how you could actually apply for a PPP loan. The other individual I have joining me today is the incomparable April Richardson, who in her own right is definitely a phenomenal woman entrepreneur, owns Baked in Baltimore, owns DC Sweet Potato Cake, which I have to stay away from April because otherwise I will have picked up 50 pounds in this quarantine. But the cakes are definitely so delicious. And she's also an attorney, and that's how I actually met April. So let's just go actually before I even talk about the economic stimulus, because I can come back to that since I have April on the line and I have Joye. April, you were recently featured in CNN.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your experience, your story, and what in the world happened through this process of you applying for a PPP.
See, what had happened was.
So actually, let's before we for those who don't know what a PPP, Joy, just briefly say in 2 minutes or less, what is the PPP for those who don't know?
So is the Paycheck Protection Program. It is supposed to help and assist small business owners in keeping their staff employed and keeping their business running by giving them a loan of up to $20 million for payroll. And that's the long and short of it. And it should be forgivable as long as you use 75% of it for payroll. It's a forgivable loan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So April, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So one thing that you just left out, one other addition to the title besides all those other things, that I also own Savor Food Hall. Remember, I just opened the first food hall in Prince George's County and the second African-American owned food hall in the nation. We opened, October? And then COVID-19 hit. So essentially, when COVID-19 hit, we have I have locations that involve people coming in to purchase, whether it's from my manufacturing arm, because we manufacture for Starbucks, Wegmans, Nordstrom, Safeways. Our products are in about 500 or 600 stores, and we have employees that work within my various organizations. So essentially, when COVID-19 hit, I was in the same boat that everybody else was in. The world came to a stop, at least fiscally. And then most of the companies had to determine how were they, going to be able to continue operating, or if they were going to temporarily shut down or partially shut down. How it really all started is that, the SBA had announced all of the programs, and none of us had, information about them. We were only learning as the SBA was rolling out programs. So I'd like to say that we were kind of all learning at the same time, us and the feds, private industry, both large and small. So some of the programs that rolled out, was the Payment Protection Program, the Economic Industry Disaster Loan Program. Maryland, the state of Maryland had a program. Prince George's County then, rolled out their program. The first thing that we did was we looked at the programs in and out to see where we best fit. You know, of course it made sense for my company and every other company in America to apply for a grant, but the grants were far and few. So the closest thing that came to mimicking a grant was the payment protection program, because it was simple. You tell, you tell the SBA what your payroll look like, and then they take the average, and then they were supposedly miraculously would send you a check in order to keep you operating. So that program made sense for us because it was not quite a loan. I couldn't wrap myself around some of the loan programs that were out there, because I'm thinking, wait, I have no revenue coming in, number one, and now I am being punished for a pandemic that I didn't start, number two, and now I have to get a loan in order to pay for something that is stopping my company from operating. So I couldn't wrap myself around some of the other private loan programs. So the payment protection program made the best sense. So like, my company and millions of other companies, we filed, we submitted all of our paperwork with one of our lenders, and we had no indication about what happened to our applications. I applied for the EDL, for that grant program, nothing. I applied for payment protection program, nothing. I applied on my birthday, April the 6th, and I remember sending the application or trying to get the application processed when the program first came out, when it was first announced. But there were certain lenders that wouldn't even allow you to apply unless you were a member of their bank or you had some type of lending relationship. That was problem number one that I saw with the program, is that some of the banks made it a requirement. They made up a requirement that you had to have done business with them, even though in the CARES Act, it was a first come, first serve type of loan. So some of the larger banks decided not to roll their program out until they got greater clarification. And that was problem number two. Some of the banks that started processing loan applications started at the moment that the SBA rolled out the program, at the moment. And companies and bigger banks took 3 days before they were able to receive applications and process them, which in my opinion slowed down companies like mine that chose to go with banks where we already had existing loan relationships. Now, once we applied, which was on my birthday, April the 6th, I remember, we didn't get notice until maybe April the 14th. At night at 7:45 p.m. from the SBA telling us that, they need additional information. I thought it was ironic because the information that they were requesting, we had already submitted to them. What offered a glimpse of hope to my company, because there were so many rumors around who's getting funding and who's not. One of the rumors that was out there is that if you received an email with an SBA loan number attached to your email, then you were already in queue and that your loans were guaranteed. That was rumor, that was speculation, and that in the end was simply not true. There was no clarity on that. And a lot of the banks, if you speak with the respective loan officers, they were still learning how the program worked and what was true and in fact not true. So it was a brand new program that was being rolled out with a lot of casualties. So at 7:45 maybe, I received the email from the SBA at PM. Mind you, I quickly responded with the additional documents, and I sat and waited. No other notices from my bank, nothing. And in between that time, I was still waiting to hear, back from the economic industry disaster loan, no information coming in. And it wasn't until I woke up one day and saw on the news that the program ran out of money. The first thing that I thought was, what is the clarification? They ran out of money. Does that mean they ran out of money so anyone that was in queue was not going to get the payment? Or did that mean that if you had an SBA loan number attached to the email requesting more documents, that you were in fact, your money was somehow set aside? So again, we met a couple more days waiting, and then Saturday, just past Saturday, we received an email like millions of other companies stating that, sorry, so sorry, we ran out of money. That was supposed to be not just the lifeline to my company, but the millions of other companies that applied. The number one problem is that the program was sold incorrectly. And that's the frustrating part, is that the PR that came out around the program was as simple as you apply your, you get your funds, when it should not have been sold that way. And that's the part that I am the most dissatisfied with. So as a result of me not getting funding, CNN had picked up the story. And that's how I was able to engage with them kind of on a national level about small businesses. But Bev, for me, it's not about small businesses. It's about micro small businesses, right? Small businesses are 5 million under. Well, what about the companies that are under, even, less than 1 million? So it's those companies that I knew we weren't going to get funding because just by me being a woman, a minority, I feel like nobody ever shows up for us anyway. So I never really wrapped my head around me getting this. I just thought it was fiction, but I applied for it just in case, my initial gut reaction was wrong.
All right. So you said a mouthful.
Oh, she did. She
Yeah,
did.
you said a mouthful, and let me correct. I actually, how could I forget about Savor? You actually owning Savor when I had my holiday party there, my 10th anniversary party there in November. So
Yes,
yes,
you shut the house
absolutely.
down. So you not only did you have your party there, but you shut the house down, and we got so many new visitors. So thank you for that. Thank you for the exposure.
Yeah, it was awesome, awesome experience. So if you're looking somewhere to have a holiday party or a gathering when we all can come out of quarantine, definitely check out Savor Food Hall.
Oh,
Amazing,
yes.
amazing food too. So, yeah, I think we all have similar experiences. I know I was frustrated by the program for, a number of reasons. One in particular, I think, now realizing that the program is out of funding, for me as a woman business owner and a taxpayer, at the end of the day, a lot of other businesses that really probably didn't need the money, in particular, like let's say Ruth Chris,
Mhm.
and the only reason I bring up them is because there's so many articles out about how much, they actually have in revenue, and yet they got a $20 million loan.
In
Right.
profit.
I mean,
Yeah.
not even just profit. They also have cash in the bank as well, whereas a lot of other smaller businesses don't have that cash on hand to pay their employees, and they took advantage of the system.
All right, they took advantage of the system because, from what I understand, the restaurant industry definitely lobbied hard to be
They did.
in the loophole. But at the end of the day, as a taxpayer, I feel like I'm the one that's still going to be footing the bill for all this stuff, all this money that came out, and I couldn't necessarily participate in any of the programs that came out. And it wasn't by choice. It wasn't like I didn't apply,
Right.
as April alluded to. Hey, what I'm saying? Like, when is someone going to show up for minority business owners?
Right.
Joy, anything you want to say about that? Because I know you work with some clients, and the good thing is that they had access to a CPA, which a lot of small business owners don't have access to, and that's because a lot of times they're stuck in the grind of actually working day to day, and they haven't cultivated the relationships with the CPAs or the bankers that can help them get the funding. But I know you even put together a program to help, kind of bear the burden and help people get the loans in.
So to April's point, and even to your point, we put together a program to assist business owners put their packages together. But it's most disappointing to find out while we were doing that and working with their banks, bigger banks, especially in this area, there was a study, I think yesterday, that came out that said that Nebraska got about 80% of their businesses got 80% of the funding.
I saw that.
To me is disappointing because this is a very big, in my opinion, and maybe it's just selfish because we're in this area, our area seems very fruitful. We have a lot of small business owners, and I'm not saying the people in Nebraska didn't deserve it, but we didn't get a fair shake because most of the banks here are the bigger banks and they weren't properly prepared. Whereas in Nebraska and other smaller states, they have a lot more local and regional banks who, for whatever reason, in this time, were able to mobilize and get their people's paperwork through in a much faster process than the bigger banks who kind of, like April said, left people stranded, put all these long requirements. I mean, I have a long-standing relationship with my bank, which is a big bank.
Yeah.
At the last minute, I've been with them for 15 years, and all of a sudden now I needed to have a loan in addition to my business account when I've been a long-standing customer, and I feel like they mistreated me. So as a result, I think you talked about it the last time that we were on the live. It makes me realize that it is much more beneficial to at least have a relationship with a local bank because they seem to be able to put things through in a lot faster manner than what the bigger banks were able to do in this period.
Yeah, just one thing that that I'm suggesting for if there is a round 4 is that if there is an opportunity to make sure that all banks are starting at the same time. So
Yes.
they should have called every bank back to the starting line and reset them, but instead they allowed others to just sprint without having additional clarifications, and that's what hurt some of the larger lenders. And that's just my assumption. I think that it goes deeper than just where the money was spent, but I think it goes to some of the relationships that are existing undercurrent that we're not privy to. I definitely think that that has a lot to do with why certain states receive funding and why certain people within financial institutions receive funding. There's some unfairness that definitely happened because I'd like to see, I definitely would like to see where Ruth Chris got their money and who was in front of them and who didn't get the money, because remember, it was supposed to be first come, first served. It'll be very interesting to see the timelines that come along with the allocation of the funds.
That is very true. And I think from this, we're going to see a lot of committees and a lot of studies that are going to show and prove, to your point, that people got, that everyone didn't start at the same time. Those relationships did matter. Ultimately, the people that are going to suffer are the small business owners like you, like I, like Beverly, and all of our employees that are connected to us, and even our customers, because if ultimately we aren't able to recover from this, which prayerfully most of the people watching this and ourselves will be able to survive this because we're survivors by nature, but that every person that we can't help is impacted down the line. So it's important that we do get the funding. I will say, I believe that they are going to pass another round. So what we've been encouraging our people to do is, if you haven't submitted it, if there's any hesitation, that you gather all your documents now. And as soon as they say it's time, that you are right there to submit and not kind of struggling like we were this last go round.
Yeah, one point of clarification for that is that needs to come out before they announce the program, is they need to clarify if you were in, you know, my position and you received an email with an SBA loan, does that mean that you need to reapply, or does that mean that you are in queue to have your loan approved? That needs to be clarified before they move this program any further.
And I hope that they will, but if history has shown us anything, is that they're just gonna put it out there and then we'll all be scrambling again. And in fact, I may even, if I'm thinking about it, maybe considering resubmitting to a smaller bank, just because their process seems to be faster. And so instead of waiting on big bank Joe to figure out what they're doing, going with a smaller bank may make sense at this, for this next go round.
Yeah, Bev and Joyce, did you guys receive any intel from people in your communities, whether we have enough smaller banks in our area to process these loans?
So we do have a couple. Some of them, though, have that stipulation that you be an existing customer.
Yeah.
There's only about 2 that I know of right now that are taking applications that are small, that have been able to get the PPP loans through.
You
because
saw
the bigger banks, most people haven't gotten their loans.
I mean, you know, like non-financial, you know, standard financial institutions like Cabbage and PayPal, you know, they jumped into, you know, the processing of these PPPs. And I'm wondering what the statistics have been to demonstrate whether they were effective in getting loans processed as well.
So as far as I know, from the people who I know who use those services, they got in too late to be effective. Because they rolled out, it was about April 12th, 13th. So the funding was, so they weren't able to get that many. I don't think they hardly were able to get anyone funded because they just got into it.
Yeah, I know. I looked at QuickBooks, because QuickBooks tried to launch their own application, online application, and it took them forever to get it up and running. And so they actually have, you know, you talk about these private sources of funding. They started a private fund, so certain people can apply within the private fund. So,
but then I have population, so then that would be my concern.
What have you ladies heard about submitting multiple applications with different lenders for the same request?
So so we don't know of anyone who did that, because we didn't encourage that, because you wanted to pick the one
exactly
opportunity. And remember, this is still going through the SBA, so you're going to be tracked by your tax ID number, so it's not going to be multiple times. So We didn't really encourage it. So as a result, I don't really know anybody who did that.
Yeah.
So I do have a question for you, April, because you are an attorney too. These class action lawsuits that are now being filed, what's your thoughts on that, and whether or not a small business owner, if you were left out and you feel that you were unjustly or unfairly left out, maybe joining in one of these class action lawsuits?
I'm not the litigious type of girl, first. I just think it's too early, too soon. I think that these law firms, so what some of your listeners may not know is that I come from white collar crimes prosecutions, frauds and scams. 17 years, when the recession first came around, I was prosecuting, white collar crimes and frauds and scammers, et cetera. Then I went to the FDIC to shut down the financial institutions, and we determined which, bankers or people who needed to be held responsible for frauds and scams. And like any program, there will be people that are out there designed to take your money for whatever reason. Number one, it's too early. You have to ask, why are these law firms advancing so fast, so soon? And part of it is if you get people in their most vulnerable state, it's a fear factor. People are going to have a knee-jerk reaction to anything that they think is an immediate solution to their problem. I tell people, stop, think, relax, and focus on getting your finances correct and ready to apply for this fourth round, or take that energy that is litigious in nature and bury yourself into ways that you have to revamp your company. I just think it's too soon. When it comes to litigation, the people that come out the most are the law firms. Hands down. Lawyers always win.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Too soon.
Okay, so we did enough ranting and ranting about the program. I feel like we got a chance to kind of talk about. So Joy, what are you telling your people, your business clients that you're working with? What are you telling them right now are their next steps to try to navigate through this pandemic? Because we don't know how much longer we will be, I guess, restrained in terms of working. But what are you telling your clients? And then April, I want you to think about it. What are you doing as a business owner in terms of trying to move your business forward too?
So I think what we're talking to people about is making sure they're looking at their numbers and their budgets and looking at each thing that you're doing, what expenses that you have, because now, unfortunately, someone's going to be hurt by this pandemic. And people with large overheads and large office spaces, we need to look at that now that everyone has gotten somewhat used to working virtually, looking at those expenses to see if they're still necessary and whether or not you need to pivot your business to be a little bit more online or even some type of hybrid, but looking at your expenses overall, because if nothing else, we've learned to be lean and mean, because with less revenue coming in, you can't spend money you don't have. And because the loans haven't been funded, the grants aren't coming in. I know that April said she applied to the EIDL, the PPP. I'm sure you probably applied to the state of Maryland and even Prince George's County. At this point, no one gets their money yet. And so you have to look at less. And so you have to start to streamline, and you're looking at costs in every way possible and just making sure that your business model is going to sustain you going forward. Because even when they say Maryland's open for business, people aren't going to run out their houses and run to businesses every day. They're going to be scared. There's going to be a little bit of fear. So we have to kind of look at this for the long haul and just look at what makes sense for the business. And in some cases, that means that some people are going to have to pivot and look at their business in a completely different way than they did before.
Yeah. So the first thing that I tell everyone, I spent years, and I still do, I turn companies around for a living, companies that are kind of falling apart or need to pivot or need to rethink their strategies. The first thing that I tell anybody in business is that being in business is probably the biggest challenge to your mental health that you will ever face. It looks like anxiety, it looks like schizophrenia, it looks like bipolar. It has all of these elements of mental health. And if we're not, number one, making a conscious decision to have a stronger approach to the way that we show up in our businesses, that's number one. Be strong enough to endure this, because this is going to be a mental health battle with yourself and with other people that are around you. Number two, the true my gut reaction to this is that a lot of companies are not going to make it. This is going to be a cleansing, and this is going to be a purging. For companies that have been operating and they have been looking for a way out, you really have to have a real conversation about yourself to see if you really, really like your business. If you don't, use this as an opportunity to get out of it. And that would save a lot of, that would free up a lot of funds for people who just don't want to engage in their businesses anymore. But first you have to, and if you decide that you want to be in business, then you have to decide that you are going to stay in business. So I literally made a real decision that I am not going down. My company will survive this. There are some companies that are wavering, and as soon as you put that element of doubt, I think that you stop being creative with regards to how you will sustain. Streamlining, Joyce, makes so much sense, but in order to streamline, people have to have conversations with people that are anchoring them, such as with their landlords. Here's the unfair part. The unfair part is that we did not create this. And the unfair part is that we're going to have to pay, our businesses are going to have to pay disproportionately in order to get us out of it. So you may have a landlord that may be willing to push down your, rent for 3 months, but that just means that at some point that rent is going to double.
Right.
So if you don't have a plan to address increasing business at 3 times the amount, then you might as well go ahead, decide that being in business in this way is not for you. Partnering with other companies probably is not the right time to have these conversations, because everyone is questioning whether they will be in business. So some of the normal conversations that I would suggest, and some of the normal things that I would suggest to businesses that they do, is not going to work in this environment. However, one thing that I would offer is this piece. Companies are going to go down. This will be an amazing opportunity to start acquiring businesses that are similar to yours or the same as yours. Mergers and acquisitions could be one of your best friends, and creative ways in which you partner with companies that need to be absorbed, because you may not be able to have the funds or resources to acquire them, but the conversation can happen now with those organizations about future revenues and revenue splits and profit sharing. So think about it from the bigger guys' perspectives. When the markets go down, somebody's making money. So why can't it be you making money at your, at your level? And last, before I kind of be quiet, instead of spending time worrying about what to do, this is a great opportunity to click on YouTube and learn a new skill set. How do you do a merger? How do you do an acquisition? Or if you want to sell your company, how do I sell my company? And how do I best gain the best exit strategies in case you guys need to exit out of your companies?
Wow, so powerful, so powerful. I'll say this, because you talk about a lot of companies won't survive this. And, you've been knowing me, April, you probably met me at one of my worst times. I would say I was really facing some challenges in life, in my personal life, and suffering a lot of losses. And, one of the things I learned out of that is persistence and determination that are, actually helped me to make it to my 10-year anniversary, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think in this kind of situation, it goes back to, you really have to evaluate if it's something that you really want to do. If you really want to be an entrepreneur, if you really want to do the thing that you say you want to do, and then you want to look at opportunities in this market, right? One of the things I will say, I think, there are a lot of opportunities in this market, but, even as you're buying up things, you also want to make sure you have some liquidity, right? You want to make sure you
Right.
have some cash, because cash is going to be king in this kind of market environment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's one more thing, and then we're going to jump off. I do want you to, because you do have a background in white collar crime, and because, we're fortunate definitely to have you join this live. For those who actually got funding, what tips can you give them in terms of how they should handle the money, and to prevent themselves from being being caught up in something on the back end of this situation?
Number one, use the money in the way that you said that you were going to use it. Number one. put the money kind of in a separate account. You already know that most banks will offer like 20 different accounts. Put that money aside and document every single thing that you do with every single dollar, and make sure that when you are, because right now there are no rules. There's no program that talks about the forgiveness part of the loan, but you do know that that is coming. So make sure that you're putting it together. One thing that I will say is that when CNN featured me in their article, I received emails from everybody around the world. What they don't know about me is my white collar crimes background. So some of the offers that I received were absolutely ridiculous, absolutely scams, absolutely things that were trying to pull me in order to give people a business that they saw had value. Loans that were at the loan tracking levels, people who were promising to do things for me if only I shared with them my finances. And we, what comes with your finances, your EIN and other information that's on there. Right now, I'm going to tell your audience that they have to be careful with quick fixes. People who are purporting to promise you that, number one, they can guarantee that you can get any of the federal loan programs for a low price of $40,000. The information, no one can guarantee anything with any of these programs. So there are two ways that you have to look at fraud. One is fraud by applicants, and then the other is fraud that is making applicants victims. So just be vigilant. If it's too good to be true, y'all already know the answer. Desperate times does not have to call for desperate measures. I'd rather lose my company just because I don't have financing instead of lose my company to a scammer. It's just bottom line.
Okay, with that being said, Joy, do you have any final words?
No, I think April summarized it. Yes, track all the money. There's going to be stipulations. There's going to be things that come up. Separate bank account is a definite yes. But yes, track it separately and know that they're going to scrutinize this heavily. So you want to make sure that everything is in order. So yes, I agree with everything.
I have a question for Joyce, though, for people out there. Joyce, I've hosted multiple webinars for individuals and business owners. Can one of you guys just talk really briefly about what if companies don't have QuickBooks? What do you suggest that they submit in lieu of having QuickBooks and financials?
So one of the things that they can submit is they can actually submit their tax return. Is always a good guide. Or I always tell people you can create an Excel spreadsheet. You have to have tracking. It doesn't have to be QuickBooks. It doesn't have to be Xero or anything else. It can literally be a financial summary of where you are. It can even be a Word document, however you put it together. But you have to be able to show what came in and what went out, because that's what they're really. And even in some banks actually ask for bank statements as well. So you can submit documentation.
Excellent.
Excellent. Okay, with that being said, I want everyone to be on the lookout for, maybe the next round of funding, the next package that may get passed. So like I said, at the beginning of the year, there have been 3 major pieces of legislation. Let's see if the 4th gets passed, and we will continue to keep you posted and updated with any information that can help your small businesses grow. Thank you all for joining in. If you need assistance, definitely give me a call. My number is 301-306-1234. And my website, www.irshelpattorneys.com. And if you need to get in contact with Joy or April, you can definitely hit me up at one of those numbers, and I will make sure I route them appropriately. Thank you guys for joining in. Take care.
Bev. You're awesome.
All right. Bye-bye. Let me see.